do you know if you're living in a police state? Most of the time, I think, you don't really know. It's not like police come up to you all the time and interfere with you all the time. If you keep your head down, if you mind your own business, if you stay indoors, if you keep your thoughts to yourself, you probably had very little interaction with your rulers in any given police state. That is, if you chose to strictly govern yourself, the state wouldn't feel the need to govern you directly. I'm quite sure it was that way in the Soviet Union and even in Nazi Germany if you weren't Jewish. Just keep your head down. I know that's the case because I actually know a fair number of Russians who left the Soviet Union during the brief period of what they called détente with the West in the late 1970s. These were Russians who were allowed to emigrate to the West. They said they had two ways of talking. The first, when they were in public or when they didn't know the people who they were with very well. It was a defensive way of talking, assuming whatever they said would be reported to a secret policeman. And then there was how they spoke with their absolutely closest and most trustworthy friends and family, when they could let their guard down and whisper the truth to each other. I don't know if you could even do that now, though. I mean, think of every electronic device that tracks you and listens to you right now. Imagine trying to go without your phone, which knows your location by GPS. It knows who you were meeting. How would you even arrange a meeting without your phone, without email, without texting? None of that. It would be very difficult to live that life now. But the fear of avoiding the attention of the police was a constant. I had a friend from the Soviet Union named Eugene who came over during détente. Maybe I told you this story before. And he went to the University of Calgary when he came over. And I went to U of C as well for my undergrad. And at the University of Calgary, in case you don't know it, it has nice big lawns. And then there's sidewalk paths traversing these lawns. Here's an actual picture of the U of C, one of their lawns. But you know how it is with public lawns and sidewalks. Sometimes it's shorter and quicker to walk on the lawn a little bit rather than walk straight and then make a 90-degree turn. Take a bit of a shortcut. My point is that Eugene told me that he would be walking at University of Calgary with his friends, and they would turn to go a certain way, maybe to class or whatever, and they'd walk a little bit on the lawn to get to the next paved sidewalk, but not Eugene. He said he would stay on the sidewalk, even though it was sort of ridiculous, like a robot or something, walking straight and then making a 90-degree turn rather than just cutting the corner like his friends. And he told me, his friend said to him, "What on earth are you doing?" And he told me he had never really thought about it, but the real answer was, back in the Soviet Union, if you walked on the grass at a place like a university, as opposed to staying strictly on the sidewalk, it was an absolute certainty that some policeman would come up to you, perhaps in a uniform, but just as likely some secret policeman, and take your name and write down your details and put it in your file. That's what he said to me. And the fear of attracting the attention of the state was so inculcated into him, it was second nature after, I don't know, he was 20 or 25, that he was programmed, even how he walked. The story is pitifully sad, but he told me his friends asking him that was sort of a crisis, an epiphany, and he chose at that moment not to live like that anymore, and he would walk on the lawn if he had to, if he wanted to. But what a story about conditioning. To be a prisoner, even if you're not in prison, to be your own prison guard in your own mind. That's what he had become after living in the Soviet Union his whole life. That's what it was like in the 1970s in the USSR. But the thing about 2025 in the United Kingdom is you cannot hide from the secret police. Being alone, being out at night, being with your secret close friends, none of that actually gives you immunity or insulation from today's version of the KGB. I put it to you, it's far more pervasive than the police states of the past. George Orwell, in his book 1984, predicted many things, including a TV set called a telescreen that listened to you. That was in the book, 1984. He predicted newspeak, truth or lies, freedom is slavery. But he could not imagine the panopticon of the year 2025. Panopticon is an interesting word, isn't it? It means to see everything. That's literally what it means. That's what Jeremy Bentham, the philosopher, called a circular prison that he designed, where prisoners were like in an outer ring and guards were in an inner hub, and everyone was under surveillance all the time. Bentham came up with that idea, 250 years ago, and hundreds of prisons are actually set up that way. But like I said, there's no need for an actual cop to have eyes on you in an actual jail. Now the machine spies on you. The Matrix spies on you. It's called the algorithm. It's called machine learning. That's how it got to know who to target and who not to. It's not even humans doing the censoring these days. I don't think in history there has ever been less privacy than there is now, and good luck living off the grid. Which brings us to the case of Graham Linehan. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name even. I only just learned about him. He's the creator of the British-Irish comedy called Father Ted. Now, this morning, I watched a whole episode of Father Ted to understand who he was. And let me just say, God bless the British and the Irish, but holy do they ever have a different sense of humor over there. But they say he's a bit like the Seinfeld of the United Kingdom, just sort of the star comedian who created this great sitcom. That's what they say. Father Ted was popular for a while, but Graham Linehan, or Glinner, as the Brits call him online, he's gotten a bit political in his old age. Like J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, he has started to speak out against transgenderism, just like J.K. Rowling. He tweets about it a lot. In fact, if you scroll down his Twitter feed, frankly, he's deeply motivated by it. He thinks about it a lot. And it looks like he's in some litigation about it too. His pinned tweet from a few days ago, don't forget next week on Thursday and Friday, 4th and 5th, when I'll be on trial in the UK for crossing a trans activist and his willing goons from the Metropolitan Police. Do come along to say hello. Well, little did he know, he was in America coming home for that court battle, that the police would pick him up, 5 police, and apparently they were armed, which is not normal in the UK. And they held him and they grilled him for hours, and they charged him with illegal tweeting. That's the thing, I guess. Here's a post by Sir Toby Young of the Free Speech Union, who said, Glinner was arrested under suspicion of having committed an offense under Section 3A of the Public Order Act. Section 3A says, quote, a person who distributes or shows or plays a recording of visual images or sounds which are threatening is guilty of an offense if he intends thereby to stir up religious hatred or hatred on the grounds of sexual orientation. Glinner cannot possibly be guilty of this offense since it makes no reference to transgender status, and all 3 of the tweets the police questioned him about referred to trans rights activists. And then he concluded, for that reason, there is 0 chance of the Crown Prosecution Service bringing a case against Glinner. Well, far be it for me to disagree with an expert like Sir Toby, but maybe it's not actually about securing a conviction. Maybe charging him is about terrorizing people into silence, including him himself, but more about others. Maybe it's about shaming Glinner, about showing that they're, no matter how powerful or popular they are, no one is safe if you transgress transgenderism, that there's always someone listening to them, that their words are now crimes, and even though real crimes go unpunished in the UK, your thought crimes won't. Maybe it's not about the law at all. The whole thing was so stressful, by the way, the doctors had to be called for his incarceration. They were worried he was going to have a stroke. That's what that picture's about. So what were the tweets that he tweeted? Well, for one thing, thousands of people have since reposted those comments, giving them far more viewership than had police not arrested him. I'll read them. The first says, if a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent abusive act. Make a scene, call the police, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. It's advice for women and girls who discover a man in a women's private place like a bathroom. There's an obvious joke to be made here. The police would probably insist that you say, punch her in the balls. Her. But you have to go through that sort of trutherism, don't you? You have to use their made-up names and say her and say ma'am. Here's another tweet that says, a photo you can smell. I don't know what he's getting at or who he's getting at, but again, it's probably rude. But so what? This is the UK. You're allowed to be rude. And then the last one, he says, I hate them, misogynists and homophobes, F them. Again, probably rude. Let's agree it's rude, but so what? That's a crime. 5 armed police pull you over and grill you. Now, all 3 of these posts were from months ago. And Linehan just came back from America. Not sure if he wrote those tweets when he was in America, but he was writing them on an American social media platform. And now he's been arrested in London for writing on an American website. And the police refused to bail him unless he promised to stop posting on Twitter, or X as it's now called. Do they have the power to do that? Can any pro-transgender cop arrest someone who is rude towards trans people and say, stop tweeting or you'll stay in jail? Well, of course, and that's why I disagree with my friend Sir Toby, is that it may not be lawful, but it works.